We live in a world that believes that logic and reason are the primary ways to attain knowledge. We over-identify with intellect to the point where we literally believe the statement that says, "I think, therefore I am." And therein lies the very belief system that traps us. That is because the intellect is a tool, a single tool inside a toolbox that has many other tools. The owner of that toolbox cannot even be defined, let alone personified or given a fixed identity. Yet we reduce that infinite, eternal, true self into a single tool, the intellect, and we throw out everything else. Let's place the intellect in perspective. Your intellect is a part of you, and it is a vital part. It is part of the cognitive systems that you possess as a human being. Again, just one part of the entire cognitive system, which also includes other parts such as the knowing that comes from the heart, the innate or the smart body system, the intuition system, DNA, and many other non-physical cognitive aspects of the human soul, some of which go beyond time and space and do their work beyond the levels of intellect and physicality and time. Work that sometimes we recognize in our dreams, for example. Furthermore, our feelings or emotions are also part of the cognitive system, and they carry vast amounts of data that is beyond the intellect. And so the intellect does not contain our identity. It is simply a tool in a vast, multi-dimensional toolbox. However, by the time that you are an adult, you have been taught to disconnect your identity from your feelings and to think of your selfhood in terms of the intellectual orientation. And so your identity seems to be in your head, and your feelings, intuition, heart intelligence, and so on quite often appear to contradict your intellectual position. To add to the confusion, you try to solve all problems through the use of reasoning alone. And therein lies the problem. You have been taught to submerge the very intuitive and emotional abilities that the intellect needs to do its proper work. The intellect was designed to work with the support of the rest of your cognitive system, not against it or in ignorance of it. It literally requires the rest of the system for feedback, for support, and even to solve work that needs to be done behind the scenes, in the subconscious, as they say, in the multidimensional aspects of the self. When denied that feedback, the intellect can spin on endlessly in frenzied loops of confusion and stress. And when you then identify with the intellect, you push it against the wall, asking it to do way more than it was designed for, to be responsible for things it cannot even see or conceptualize, let alone solve, to even define you. The intellect is vital. It is a fine part of us. We need to honor and respect and love it, but we need to understand its place in the grand scheme of things and respect that too. Then and only then do we find balance and power by allowing those other aspects of the selfhood to begin to add their richness, fulfillment, and vitality to our lives effortlessly. If you sometimes still think that you should be able to solve all problems and to know all the reasons for any given happenstance, then correct yourself by realizing that the intellect cannot handle that kind of information. The bulk of life is multidimensional, which means it is beyond the scope of intellect. It is not that the intellect is weak, not at all. The intellect is perfect, but it is a tool, a single tool in a large toolbox. Its job is to navigate in 3D, in physical reality. That is all. Remember, physical reality is less than 0.0001% of reality, of your reality. You are far more vast than your physical presence. Once you realize this, and you realize that the intellect is one tool in a vast toolbox, you start to see how silly it is to expect it to do everything. As silly as expecting a hammer to do all jobs, including hammering in nails, mixing baking dough for making cake, plastering the wall, painting the house, handling microbes in the laboratory, and so on. The other thing that is important to know regarding the intellect is that it is a cultural phenomenon. That is to say that unlike intuition, which is independent and true, the intellect is subject to socialization, to conditioning and programming by the environment. It can and usually is programmed with a great many things that are just simply not true. False beliefs that belong to the given historical period and location, or to that particular society that the intellect is raised within, even down to the family unit. It can orient itself along the lines of those beliefs, using all of its reasoning abilities to bring such a world picture into focus, collecting data that agrees with that world view and self-view, and rejecting what does not, regardless of truth. It wants to see the world as it is seen by the minds of others, regardless of truth and regardless of what is best for you as an individual. The beliefs of the intellect operate then as powerful suggestions, particularly when the intellect identifies with those beliefs, so that there is little distance between the intellect and the beliefs that it holds. And that is why you need to allow the support of all your other systems of the self, so that your intellect can automatically free itself from the pressures of socialization.